Dr. Philippa Strum is going to moderate the first panel. She was, for practically close to a decade, I believe, the head of the U.S. Studies program here and is a senior scholar at the center. And we thank her for her leadership on this issue going back many, many years. Flip Strum organized several programs on Islam in America, and we feel that it is an important issue, and we're very happy that you are here today. The Wilson Center is the official national memorial to our 28th president, the only president we ever had who had a PhD. In life, he always felt that you had to get scholars and policymakers together. In effect, get the scholar out of his or her ivory tower and understand the practical problems of governance, and get the policymaker away from his or her inbox, where all they can really think about is a meeting next Thursday, as opposed to thinking 5-10 years out. And you hope through the dialogue of the scholar and the policymaker, better policy can emerge. We are a public-private institution. We get roughly a third of what keeps this place going from the federal government. We raise 2/3. So I want to welcome you all, and I know you're going to have an invigorating discussion. I want to thank our two judges on the first panel. We appreciate the time that all 6 of our visiting Muslim officials were able to give to come here today and being part of this program. It is being webcast. Thank you again for being at the Wilson Center. You're welcome here anytime.
Thank you very much, Mike, and I'd like to add my welcome to all of you. It's a great pleasure to see you here, particularly since there are faces I don't recognize, which means that you haven't been at the center all that frequently, and so it's doubly a joy to introduce you to the center and welcome back to those of you who have been coming to our programs regularly. What we're going to do today is we're going to have conversations. We're going to have the first conversation with the 2 judges who you see up here before you. After they finish speaking with each other, we will have Q&A, we'll have a coffee break, and then we'll have the second panel where we have 3 mayors and 1 city council member who will be speaking, and again, that will be the same format. For those of you who are watching on our webcast, we have handed out short biographies to the people in the room, but we'll be giving you brief introductions of each of the speakers. With that, I would like just to introduce briefly our first 2 panelists, Judge David Shahid, who is a judge in Indiana and who has sat on both civil and criminal cases, first appointed as a judge in 1999 after having served as a magistrate for some years. And he has presided, interestingly, and I hope we can talk about this in a while, over the Drug Treatment Diversion Court and Reentry Court. He was chosen by the Indiana Correctional Association in 2007 as Judge of the Year for his work with ex-offenders and defendants trying to cover from substance abuse. So welcome, Judge Shahid. Judge Halim Danadina is a Los Angeles County Superior Court judge appointed by Governor Jerry Brown in 2012. Before that, Judge Danadina was an assistant district attorney for Los Angeles County, prosecuting hardcore cases in something called the Hardcore Gang and Major Crimes Division, and then serving in the District Attorney's Special Operations Administration. He is an adjunct professor of law at Whittier Law School, where he teaches criminal trial advocacy. So welcome to you, Judge Danadina. And I want to start by asking each of you to speak a little bit about your career before you became a judge, just so we get a sense of how does one get into this whole judging business. Judge Shahid, will you start us off?
Yes, well, thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you also for the invitation to participate in what I consider to be a very important opportunity for us to speak about our lives in the public as Muslims. And after law school, I started out with a plan to be in private practice primarily, and I worked as a lawyer for a state agency that was responsible for unemployment insurance programs, the collection of the taxes, payment of the unemployment insurance, and also job training programs. And then I had a private practice on the side. And I did that for about 9 years, primarily working with plaintiffs' work. Then I had an opportunity to become a commissioner, a part-time commissioner, working for a judge in the Superior Court. And that turned into an opportunity to become a full-time magistrate. And then when there was an opportunity for a vacancy on the bench, Superior Court, I was able to get appointed by the governor to fill that vacancy.
And you went to school in Indiana?
Yes, Indiana University School of Law. Now it's called the McKinney School of Law in Indianapolis.
Thank you. Judge Janadina?
All right, thank you. And I also want to echo Judge Shahid's gratitude for inviting us here. It's really a pleasure, and the hospitality has been great as well. I grew up in the Chicago area before moving to California. I was one of those kids who used to talk too much at family functions, and so everyone told me to be a lawyer. I came to California to attend Pomona College in Claremont, California, where I studied international relations. And like everyone who goes to Pomona College, I wanted to obtain a degree to change the world. I got my degree in international relations, and I always envisioned working at a place much like the Wilson Center or the State Department. I went to law school to get involved in public international law, and I kind of saw myself on the world stage long term. Then when I went to law school at UCLA, I had the hardest time figuring out how to get from point A to point B, and became very interested in criminal law while I was there. My initial intention was to become a public defender and to get involved in public service on that platform. And then when I graduated from law school and I was not extended an offer from the public defender's office, I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do. I took a job with the LA County District Attorney pretty much out of necessity. It was either that or move back home and live with my parents. But I really, really enjoyed being a prosecutor and representing the people of the state of California in criminal court for 14 years. And I got to really, I found it to be a very rewarding experience to serve the public more on the micro level rather than the macro level that I had originally envisioned for myself. And that experience of being in court every day for so long inspired me to seek a judicial appointment. So I applied for an appointment with the governor's office and was appointed last year.
All right, well, you know, the world stage may lie ahead.
Who knows?
Who knows what's going to happen? But you answered what was going to be my next question. How does one get interested in becoming a judge? And from your experiences in the courtroom, that's what did it.
Well, I would like to say that, you know, it's a dream from childhood to wear the robe and preside over a courtroom. But really what it has a lot to do with, I think, is when you're in a courtroom so much and you're interacting with judges on so many cases, very important, significant cases, you start to imagine how you would do the job or how you would do it differently, because so much of what a judge does has a lasting impact on the outcome of cases. And some of it's born out of frustration. You know, I would never do it like that. I would do it a completely different way. And sometimes it's out of admiration. You know, this judge is doing such a fantastic job, and I would like to contribute in that way as well. And it got to a point in my life where the stress of being a trial lawyer day in and day out made it hard to be around my family, and hard for my family to be around me, I should say. And it just seemed like I wanted to stay involved in court without having my own cases. So really the only way to do that is to be a judge.
All right, thank you. Does that comport with your experience, Judge Shahid?
Well, my experience is a little different. Quite honestly, I didn't start out on a path to become a judge. I was primarily motivated by the image of Islam in the world. And as one person, you know, you say, how can I do when you see that there's this distortion of Islam, and this is way before 9/11. And so one of the things I was able to figure out is that a lot of people won't come to the mosque to find out about Islam, but if you run for public office, they want to know what you're about, and it gives you an opportunity to interact with people where you really wouldn't have an opportunity to interact before. So I really didn't have a trajectory for being a judge, but I saw that political involvement and running for office was an opportunity to engage people and have people know what a Muslim was like and what they thought and what it was like to be around them. So that was really my primary aim, and I was just fortunate to be able to be in the right place at the right time. So being a judge became an option.
And you didn't think of running for electoral office?
No, I didn't think I'd be able to win in my state, which is kind of amazing that it's happened. But yes, but I didn't really see being elected as important as interacting with people in my community so that people would have an opportunity to ask a Muslim a question and to be able to interact and get a sense of what Muslim values are really like.
That's really, really interesting. Let's stay with that just for a moment. You were appointed by Governor O'Bannon, and this was 1999?
Yes.
Right. Okay, and I am emphasizing this is pre-9/11 because we're going to have one judge who was appointed pre-9/11 and the other one post-9/11. I want to talk a little bit about that whole experience. But as I understand it from Fred Biesecker,
Yes.
who is the gentleman who shepherded Judge Shahid's nomination appointment
Right.
through, he got letters of recommendation from people when a vacancy occurred and brought in a couple of people for interviews, and then said that a major consideration in making the appointment was, can whoever is appointed be elected? Because, as I understand it, the judge then has to run for re-election.
Yes.
And that became a consideration. Were you having conversations about that? Was there anything about, well, can a Muslim be re-elected to the judgeship?
Yes. Well, he didn't have those conversations with me directly, but it was a major consideration because in my community, when I ran the first time, I lost by 600 votes, and it took about over 90,000 votes to be elected. So to be able to get 90,000, close to 100,000 people to vote for you with a name like Shahid is not the easiest thing to pursue.
So your community is not major Muslim.
Not at all. So yes, it was a consideration, and so, but fortunately, I was given the chance. I did lose the first time, but then was able to run again in 2002. So, and that worked out okay.
It certainly has worked out okay. We're delighted about it. All right, Judge Danadina, I know who was appointed by Governor Jerry Brown, and as I understood it from Salam al-Mariyati, who I ought to stop here and thank. Salam al-Mariyati, who directs the Muslim Public Affairs Council, helped identify people for this program, along with Muhammad Yunus of Gallup and Yvonne Haddad of Georgetown University. So thanks to all of them. And I understand from Salam al-Mariyati and also from Joshua Groban, who is the gentleman who shepherded the appointment through, that if I understand correctly, and please correct me if this is not correct, that you went to MPAC, the Muslim Public Affairs Council, or to Mr. al-Mariyati, and asked if you considered going for an appointment, they would support you. And Salam al-Mariyati said to me, well, their response was, are you sure you want a recommendation from us? And apparently MPAC the year before had tried to get a woman nominated for a district attorney's position and from Governor Schwarzenegger, and had gotten absolutely nowhere. So they thought that maybe MPAC would be the kiss of death. Apparently it wasn't, but we understand that you had to go through a very rigorous vetting as well. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, in California, it's similar to other states where on the Superior Court, trial court level, the governor appoints people to vacant positions to serve as judges, but then those are elected. So when you're at the end of your term, you're up for re-election. And so we'll see if a judge can be elected, a Muslim judge can be elected in California, since that hasn't happened yet. when I was going through the vetting process, part of that is you get vetted by the local bar association. The state bar has their own vetting process. It's many, many interviews, and then one final interview with the appointment secretary. And during all of this, you're supposed to get letters of recommendation from certain references from your employer, people who know you within the legal community and extended community if you're involved in public service. And so when I was going through the process of trying to figure out who I wanted to write letters on my behalf to show, a nice breath of support, I met with the LA County Sheriff. And the sheriff had always had a very influential role to play in judicial appointments, particularly among prosecutors who were seeking a judicial appointment. And when I met with the sheriff, Lee Baca of Los Angeles County, he asked me, much to my surprise, when I first sat down with him, he said, Halim, that's an Arabic name, right? Are you Muslim? And I was very kind of impressed. And I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I am. And he asked me, I'd love to be able to put something about your Muslim identity in a letter of recommendation to the extent that it diversifies the bench of California. Is that all right with you? And at first I thought I guess it's nice of him to ask, but I never really considered that as being something about my identity I'd have to either decide actively to conceal or to publicize. That was only the first of many experiences that I had with that. And so he asked me, he said, do you know how many other Muslim judges there are in California? And I didn't know. I'd only had experience in LA County, and California is such a huge state and such a diverse state. So I told him I would find out. I called the Muslim Public Affairs Council, and they have a government relations liaison. So I called her, and I asked her, do you keep any statistics on Muslims who are in public life and whether there are any judges in California who are Muslim? And she said, we do have that information. Let me get back to you. And when she called me back, I have to admit, I was shocked when she said there are no Muslim judges in California, or at least none that are that have disclosed that part of their identity. And I couldn't believe it. I thought, even post 9/11 and all of that, I couldn't believe that in a state as large as California and as diverse as California, that would still be, something that would be new to have a Muslim judge. And so I went back to the sheriff and I told him that, and that's when I got more involved with MPAC, and they asked me, do you want us to write a letter for you, because we're not sure if that would be taken well. And I did have to consider, actually, maybe I was being naive. I had to consider the fact of whether in this vetting process, at any point your application can die because of someone who you don't know, who's never met you, deciding to kill your application. That's just sort of the way it works. And with potential prejudice that may be out there and people not really knowing me personally, if someone knew there was a Muslim applicant, coming down the pipe, they might decide to do something or sabotage it. And I thought at that moment I made a decision that, this is who I am. I'm going to either live or die with that. And there's no point in trying to actively conceal something that has been a part of my life since I was born and been a part of my community activities as a student and as a professional. And so I told him, go ahead and put that in the letter. And it was really interesting because on the day that I got my appointment, I got called from the governor's office, and they were, going over information on my bio for a press release. And then they asked me, are you, feel free to say no, but the governor would like to say in his press release that you will be the first Muslim judge in California. Are you okay with that? And I thought, well, these people are so polite. Everyone's always asking me if I'm okay with being identified as a Muslim person. I was really, at that moment, I was thinking about myself as a young person and thinking about the generation that was coming after me, and the value that would have, even if it may be a political liability down the road. We'll see. That remains to be seen in the next year or so. I think it would have some meaning for young people deciding what profession they want, whether there are certain areas in society that they are precluded from serving in because of who they are. And I thought it might also send a message to both Muslims and non-Muslims that, Muslims are Americans like everybody else and can serve honorably in public institutions. And I thought that because of that, I wanted that information to be more publicized.
And as I understand it, there was a certain amount of hate mail, hate blogs, nastiness.
Yeah, I have to say it was a shocker to me. I was very glad that my children are too young to surf the internet on their own, because I don't know how I would explain some of the things that have been written about me in the internet. Luckily, if you Google my name, you have to get to page 2 or 3 before any of the real bad stuff comes up. But a friend of mine actually was mounting a campaign for district attorney. And in the process of doing that was meeting with potential fundraisers in the community in LA County. And he had met with a prominent businessman who was very active in the Jewish community in Los Angeles, who sent him an email. And he forwarded me this email that this individual had sent him, which said, did you hear about this Muslim judge that's been appointed by the Governor Brown? Are you okay with this? And there was a link to an article on the Jihad Watch website, which is one I'd never even heard of really until then, which had this long profile of me using my headshot that I had chosen for my press release. But then underneath it was nothing I had chosen. It was all information about how I was an undercover terrorist trained by the Muslim Brotherhood to infiltrate American institutions and institute Sharia law from within, and all of these things. And I was shocked that someone would take the time to make up all of that stuff just for the purpose of libeling me, I guess. And for the governor's office actually has told me since then that they decided that they had done the right thing with my appointment by the amount of hate mail they got after it came. And I never considered myself to be controversial. Certainly as an applicant for this position, based on my qualifications, I thought it was a completely non-controversial appointment, but it had everything to do with me being identified as a Muslim that has created this controversy. So I'm grateful to have the support of the governor's office, but we'll see whether that's enough to carry the day in an election. We were talking at the lunch. I think that was the time I decided that I would try to be as public as possible and to never turn down an invitation to speak, either in what I consider to be a friendly environment like this, or even a potentially hostile environment, because I think the way to defeat that sort of scare tactic is just to let people know who you are and really what you stand for.
You talk about a non-controversial appointment. Those of us who sit in Washington and watch what's happening on the Hill know that there is no such thing
Right.
as a non-controversial appointment. Judge Shahid, this is the post 9/11, pre 9/11. As far as you're aware, was there any blowback when you were appointed? Or do you think perhaps that this had anything to do with your not being reelected the first time around?
Well, there was an article that was done in the paper after the election the first time I ran, and the essence of the article was that the name probably had something to do with it. But when you have to have close to 100,000 votes, people, not everyone knows you. And I did come in contact with some people who didn't vote for me because one person said, "Oh, I thought you were Egyptian." And so when I saw the name, that's the reason why I didn't vote for you. So I know it had something to do with it the first time out. But ironically, post 9/11, when I thought my chances were even worse, I was able to get elected. But the environment had substantially changed. I can remember going to a fundraiser for the judges, and in my county, judges are a way that the county party, for both Republicans and Democrats make money. And so there was a fundraiser for the candidates that were coming up for judge. And I remember this was mainly just lawyers at this fundraiser. And so this gentleman that I didn't know, he was older than I was, but he came up to me and said, "Oh, hi, how are you, Taliban?" He didn't, and so I said, "No, I'm not Taliban, I'm David Shahid." He said, No, you're Taliban, And he's saying this in a way to maybe draw a little attention. So I turned away from him, he came back. But so the environment definitely had changed. But the good part was that as I became known among the lawyers, because I'd been around for, at least 6 years before I ran the first time, the Bar Association in my community had allowed the lawyers to evaluate the judge candidates. So among the lawyers, I always had high rankings, but the difficulty was getting that out to the general community. So,
Yeah, I want to come back to that in a moment, but I just, as a note to interject here, when Judge, or to-be Judge Donadino was being vetted, apparently one of the things that convinced the governor's office that they should go ahead with the appointment was the fact that the people in the district attorney's office with whom he had worked loved him. But what was more important to them was that the public defenders who had been on the other side said, yes, he can be fair. He can listen to both sides of the story. And that absolutely convinced the people in power that you should be appointed. That is no small
Oh,
compliment.
believe me, I know. I'm very glad for that.
But to go back to this whole business of the reelection and so on, tell us a little bit how that operates. Did you two go to local organizations asking for backing as well as the lawyers who were backing you? Did you have a big problem with fundraising? How does that whole thing get organized?
yes, well, you have to have a campaign chair, somebody that raises money for you, because ethical rules prevent judges or judge candidates from actually soliciting money from people. So you have to organize a campaign committee and have a campaign chair. And it's kind of a three-step process. You have to first get the support of the county organization that slates the candidates. So if you're a Democrat, you have to have there's a slating convention related to Democrats, Republicans, same thing. Then after the slating convention, then there's a primary election, and then after the primary election, there's a general election. So, and each one of those races is just a little different. So you have to have support of the county organization to begin with at the precinct level. So there's a lot of meetings that you have to go to over the course of a year to get known so that the people know who you are. Then after that, you have to raise enough money so that you can sustain and be successful in a primary challenge. And then you also have to raise money for the general election as well. So there's a lot of money that has to be raised, a lot of meetings that you have to go to, and so you have to shake hands with as many people as you can. So I've learned how to work a room, so to speak.
A lot of chicken dinners.
Lots of chicken dinners, yes.
And where do the people who are raising money for you, since you're not doing this yourself, where do they go? How do they know where to start?
Attorneys. Attorneys are the primary source of money. There's some judicial candidates that have been able to get money from unions. I have not been that fortunate. But unions are, a source of funding, and then also private individuals. But you really can't raise the kind of money that you need in a county my size without going to lawyers. The lawyers are the primary source of funding for campaigns.
What size is your county?
The community in total, I think, is around 700,000, 800,000. But to win an election, you need at least 100,000 votes.
Yeah. All right, you understand we're trying to give you pointers here.
I should be taking notes, I know.
And last question on the election process. What is the role of the media in that whole thing? Do people there pay attention to judicial contests?
Judicial races in my community are what you call down ballot races, in the sense that the frustrating part is most people don't know a judge. In other words, I can still go to a Walmart or a Kmart or a Target, whatever, and nobody is going to say anything. But every now and then, having been a criminal court judge, there are people that come up to me and says, "That's the judge who sent me to prison," or whatever. It didn't happen that often, but occasionally that would happen. So for the most part, there are always races that are ahead of mine, either for, like in 2008, it was the presidential election. And so the judges were on the other side of the ballot, and so we had to constantly remind people to go to the other side of the ballot so you can vote for your judges. And then other years is congressional races, and they lead the ticket. So Either it's the national election involving a presidential election, or the congressional races or U.S. Senate, where they're top of the ballot,
All right,
or
so
governor and so forth.
lesson for everybody, go down to the bottom of the ballot in the future and see if there's something on the other side. All right, let's talk about what happens once you get into the judgeship. Can you talk a little bit about how you see the role of the judge?
Sure. I was very fortunate, having practiced in criminal law for 14 years before starting as a judge. I knew how criminal courts work intimately. It'd been a long time since I was in a misdemeanor court, which tends to be the entry-level position for a new judge. But I was at least very familiar with the laws that were involved and the terminology, even just the logistics of how a case operates in an open courtroom. Los Angeles County Superior Court has many different disciplines. There are judges appointed to family court, juvenile court, civil court, probate court. So a variety of which, if I had started on day one, I wouldn't have known really hardly anything. So I was lucky that the subject matter was something that I was familiar with. The main adjustment for me was what you're talking about, the role. You know, when you're a prosecutor or really any litigant in a courtroom, you're an advocate. And that means you take a position and you do whatever you can within the bounds of ethics to make sure that your position prevails. And you argue your points to the judge, to the jury, to try to get your side an advantage. And as part of that process, if you really care about your job, you really internalize almost, you don't really personalize it, but you really become one with your case. If things are not going well in your case, it affects you. If things are going well, it puts you in a good mood, because that's the laser-like focus that you have on what happens in the courtroom. The judge is more on the sidelines, and so even though the judge is intimately involved with how a case proceeds by legal rulings and makes decisions that will impact a case, the judge really takes no ownership over the result, and that has taken some getting used to, because in my mind, my lawyer mind is questioning strategy and tactics and why is the lawyer doing it this way and shouldn't they be doing it the other way. And I remember what it was like being in front of those types of judges and how frustrating that was as a DA. So I keep my mouth shut. I have this internal dialogue that's always going, but rather than always coming up with a clever thing to say, as a judge, you always have to be able not to say that clever thing that you want to say at all times. And sometimes, frankly, there are results in the courtroom that I don't think are particularly good, or not decisions that I would have made if I were a juror, for example. And I have to learn to be okay with that, because it's really the process that I protect rather than the finished product that comes out. And anything that is not a miscarriage of justice does not belong to the judge. That belongs to the jury, and that the finders of facts, they're the ones who are supposed to make those decisions. I've been able to take care of that desire to think strategically a little bit in my teaching, because I teach trial advocacy. I teach young lawyers how to do trials, and then I can, engage that part of my brain that I've had to shut off. But really, as a judge, I try to be very careful, especially being a prosecutor, being on one side for so long. It's very important not only to be fair, but also to always comport yourself in a way that lets both sides know that you're even-handed and that you're going to listen to both sides equally.
Judge Shahid, what would you add to that?
Well, my approach to being a judge was, of course, as Holling says, to be seen as fair. But also, for me, I had the experience of doing major felony drug cases for 2 years. After I lost the election in 2000, rather than go back to private practice, I stayed on and worked as a commissioner. And so the only place open was doing major felony drug cases, and those are the kind of cases where for an A felony, someone would go to prison for 20 to 50 years if they were found guilty. And so, of course, during the course of a week, I'd unfortunately have to send people away, normally through plea agreements, for substantial amounts of time. And so that experience, caused me to see the waste in our system in terms of how we were doing what we were doing. And it prompted me when I had the opportunity to try to work to establish a reentry court. I was already doing a drug treatment court, but also because prior to becoming a lawyer, I visited prisons trying to help ex-offenders get a different sense of what their chances would be like after prison. So I felt comfortable with that population. So I saw a need, an opportunity for the courts to be a little bit more proactive. We refer to them now as problem-solving courts. They're different from the typical criminal justice system where somebody is either acquitted or they go to prison. But with problem-solving courts, there's an effort to try and get a slightly different result by putting in a little bit more resources. The judge's resources are different because the judge is seen as a cheerleader for the defendant who's in front of him or her. And also there are other resources, case managers and so forth, that are trying to seek a different outcome and result. So I guess in short, it's an opportunity not just to be a judge in the traditional way, but also to bring your value system to the job to try and show that you can be concerned not for just the process, but also to bring your value system to the job.
You can, if you're interested, go to YouTube and see a video of Judge Shahid making a speech to some organization or other. And one of the things you say in the course of making the speech, which I really like so much, is we have to take an interest personally to make a difference. And it sounds as if that illuminates the way you deal with people who come into your court. I want to ask you now about the whole business of being a Muslim judge, an American Muslim judge, and whether that makes any difference, not to you, of course, but to people coming into your courtroom, defendants, attorneys. Do you think that that's a whoops moment for them when they see the name of the judge who's presiding? Does it make any difference? Do you get a sense of that?
You know, I think it came up more when I was a lawyer than being a judge. You know, my first name is Arabic. It's not a terribly common Arabic first name, so it's not readily identifiable to people who don't have a lot of sophistication with Islam or with Muslim names or identity. You know, LA County, luckily, it's a fairly diverse bench, and so you're highly likely to come into a courtroom that's being presided over by a judge that, you know, may have a slightly unusual name. It may not look like yourself, or may not look like the stereotypical image of what a judge is. So, you know, every now and then someone may make a comment. When I was in Compton Court last year, I had an individual before me who represented himself, and those are always especially colorful litigants. And you know, he made some comment about my appearance, and made some Al Qaeda related comment. And you know, I think it's important for my own ethical standards not to really engage in that if it's you know, gratuitous musings of a pro per defendant. You know, it's the kind of thing you could hold someone in contempt for, but it was just better to be done with the case and to move it along. It would be a different story if I received that sort of disrespect from a lawyer or a litigant, a party who was before me. When I was a deputy DA, I had lawyers who opposed me, one in particular, make an explicit appeal to the jury to find on his side because I was Muslim, because I was different from their value system. It was actually a very enlightening experience because, one, the judge who was presiding over the case did absolutely nothing about it, and which is, I think, a dereliction of his own ethical duty. He should have done something. And two, I had to brief the issue the next time I was in court against that lawyer so that I could file a motion with the next judge to say, look, this is what the lawyer argues. You need to do something about this and prevent him from doing it. And in researching the case law and citing the cases to the judge, all of the authority happened in situations where the bigotry was directed towards Catholics or Jews. And we were in front of a Jewish judge, and he basically forced that attorney to try to explain himself and why what the comments he was making against me were any different from the comments made 100 years ago against members of these other groups. So a certain level of historical knowledge is very valuable in these circumstances. But one of the things that people have commented on in my court is I'm one of the very few courts that begins the day's proceedings with what's considered the formal opening. So sometimes when you walk into a busy courtroom, the judge comes out, the bailiff says, "Everyone rise, the court's in session, take a seat and be quiet." My court's different. We do the formal opening, and it's very meaningful to me. We stand. The bailiff instructs the audience to stand and face the flag of the United States, recognizing the principles for which it stands. And it lends the proceeding a degree of solemnity I think a lot of courts are missing. And I've actually had lawyers come up to me and tell me that this old school way of doing it, that they actually really appreciate that. And I'm very proud of the fact that I think it also illustrates the fact that my Muslimness is not at odds at all with my Americanness and how I feel about this country and the country where I was born and our system of laws. And I intend to be that kind of judge. I want people to know that about me so that I can provide an example for other people.
Judge Shahid, what about you?
Well, at the beginning, there were probably a few raised eyebrows. I can remember doing a hearing early on where there were two older gentlemen, and before I could rule on objections, they would kind of find a way without me saying anything to either sustain or object or overrule their own objections, which was kind of interesting. But for the most part, lawyers are a fairly close-knit group, and so once you're on the bench, when a lawyer has a hearing in front of you, if they don't know you, they will ask. The large firms I've heard, I was never a part of a large firm, but the large firms I've heard, it kept kind of a notebook on the judges in the counties where they practice. So young associates who had not been in front of a judge would be able to look at that notebook or talk to some of the senior partners and find out, particular quirks. But for the most part, is the judge fair? And so I think most of the lawyers know me by reputation as being fair and open and willing to listen to both sides. But one of the points that Halim mentioned that becomes somewhat problematic, especially in this era of electronic communication, Google and so forth, and that is the pro se or the self-represented people. And I had a situation where there was a case pending in my court on basically an eviction, and the person didn't want to be evicted. All I had done was set it for hearing, and so he started filing these motions where he was picking up various information when my name was Googled and twisting that into that I was Muslim and he was a Christian minister and Muslims were supposed to kill Christians, and therefore he wasn't going to get a fair hearing in front of me, that sort of thing. So those things do happen, but mainly the lawyers, as long as they know you're going to be fair, they don't really care too much, most of them.
Do you ever get asked about whether you're applying Sharia law in your courtroom?
No, never. This individual who was operating pro se and was trying to avoid being evicted, made some reference to how I was going to probably apply Sharia and somehow damage him because he was a Muslim minister. I mean, a Christian minister, but that was it.
I've been asked that.
Yeah.
I spoke earlier about never turning down an invitation to speak. I was asked to speak at Trinity Law School in Orange County, California by the Federalist Society, and they were having a panel on Sharia law in American courts. And as I was the obvious choice for a panelist because I was the only Muslim judge in California. And it was on my way home from work. So I decided to make an appearance. And the people there, and this is at a law school, had very sincere concerns based on a handful of court decisions that in various courts, mostly family courts and other parts of the country, where the judges who are entitled, based on their jurisdiction, to be persuaded by authority from outside sources, have applied Sharia law when the parties are Muslim. Usually it's a family court situation. It has to do with a dissolution of a marriage or something child custody related. And, the people are so offended by the fact that Sharia law would be used in their courts. And I had to confess to the audience that in criminal law doesn't work that way. The source of legal authority in criminal law is fairly concrete. And when you swear your oath to uphold the law, that's the law you're talking about. It comes from the Penal Code and the Constitution of the state and the Constitution of the United States. And those are really the boundaries that I work in as a judge. But it's just interesting that I would be asked, well, now that you're a judge and being a Muslim, are you going to start to abrogate that responsibility and use these foreign sources of legal authority in your courtroom? They had no real way of explaining how that concern might play out in a criminal court, like a driving under the influence case, for example, how Sharia law would impact that. But I think it is important to note that they needed to hear that from me. I mean, their assumption was, we don't have Muslim judges because Muslim judges can't uphold American laws because they're beholden to another set of laws. And it's unfortunate that I had to make that statement to a law school that no, in fact, we follow the same laws as everybody else. But it's important that we do that, I think, on a regular basis, because the microphone of the Jihad Watch people and the people who are in the media is so much louder than this microphone here, or what one judge in a state as large as California can say, law school to law school. That I think that at some point we'll get to a critical mass where these concerns aren't really present. But at the moment, since there are so few of us, I feel that a lot of people out of ignorance will have these worries about how the American justice system is going to be corrupted by the participation of Muslims.
Well, let's pick up on that. How can we try to get more Muslim judges into our courtrooms? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I think what I've learned is running for public office is challenging to the point where someone really has to have a passion for public service in this kind of way. Otherwise, it's not really attractive. Lawyers, many are interested in making money, and when you look at the pay of judges, is decent. I mean, it's a good income, but there are some lawyers that say I can make more money and have less headaches by just being a successful lawyer. So I think first and foremost there has to be a passion for public service, because without a passion to serve people and to go through the process of becoming a judge, there's no way to just kind of put out a call and say, looking for Muslim judges, and that there would be a response. So,
Right. Judge Dennehy?
Well, I think it's going to take visibility. That's really what it is. When I was growing up, I didn't know any Muslim lawyers, let alone any Muslim judges. And when you're a young person, you're trying to find your way in society. You're trying to imagine what you want to do for a living. A lot of it is just by example. Can you envision yourself doing this thing or that thing? Do you know anyone? Do you have any role models who are doing the thing that you want to do? And that's complicated by when bigotry is part of it. When you feel that, well, not only do I not know any Muslim judges, but the reason why I don't is because society doesn't tolerate it and wouldn't allow Muslims to be judges. And so you start to think about other things. I want to, be a teacher or a doctor or something else. And I think once we demystify Muslims in the justice system, and people see that, they stop thinking of me as the Muslim judge, and I'm just the judge who does a good job at what he does, then I think generation by generation, people will be encouraged, and they'll say, I met a Muslim judge, and he seems like a pretty reasonable person. I could do that too. That's why I speak a lot to groups of young people, because I want them to see that there's nothing strange about a Muslim becoming a judge. It's kind of like with the election of President Obama. Until that happened, we all knew that any American citizen could be president, right? We all knew that. But if you grew up looking different and having a different sounding name, in your heart you felt like that would be great, but maybe that's not something that is open to me realistically. I have a young daughter, and she always used to say that when she grew up, she wants to be a teacher or a doctor, because those are the adults that she has contact with. And once I became a judge, she's old enough to understand what that is. She started adding judge to the list, and she says she wants to be a judge. And that had so much meaning for me, because I feel like the only reason why she is saying that is because she knows a judge who has a name like hers, who looks like her, and she can see herself in that role. And I think once we get to that critical mass and there's more people out there who can see themselves realistically doing the job, Muslims are, I think, the ones that I know, are really into the idea of service and community, because it's a very valued principle in our faith, and it's especially rewarding to feel like your job and your labor helps the community at large. And within the legal profession, there's no better way to do that than by being a judge, because you're basically upholding the foundation of the system that we have all joined into and bought into. And I think that would also help American society at large see that Muslims are not a threat to our system. They are helping to uphold it like all other citizens.
Well, I hope that by webcasting this session and then by posting the webcast on our website, that we will help publicize this a little bit so that people can see at least 2 Muslim judges for themselves and see that you may be really tall guys, but you're not threatening at all. And tall, obviously, is in the mind of the beholder. With that, let's open this up to your questions, which I'll ask you to keep relatively short, but I'll ask you also to wait for the microphone and then identify yourself before you ask. In the back, Don Wolfensberger, please.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm Don Wolfensberger, a senior scholar here at the Wilson Center. I was wondering whether you have either heard of or can imagine any kind of a case where someone, a defendant, might ask you to recuse yourself because of the nature of a case. I'm thinking of perhaps a First Amendment case that would involve a school's prohibition on wearing some kind of article of clothing or whatever. I was going to use the example of the judge that had the 10 Commandments in his courtroom, but I think since everybody's descended from Moses, that really probably wouldn't cut. But
Well, in my state, there are specific rules on recusal, and typically they relate to family connection. Either a spouse or a child, either being a party to the litigation, or I have a daughter who's also a lawyer, and I routinely recuse on those cases where her firm has cases that are in my court. But with respect to the specific issue, lawyers in my state can ask for a change of judge for no reason, and that happens on occasion without even going into the specifics of what the case may involve. And so I think if there was some reticence with respect to my being the judicial officer in that case, they would probably use that particular mechanism to get me off the case. But there have been some other situations that have come up, but not so much for cause as opposed to just routine reasons to have me off the case and have somebody else judge it.
And California is similar in the state court level. Each side has one challenge that they can use against a judge once a case has been assigned before that judge, and they don't need to really state a reason. So if someone were really that concerned, they could always have their case transferred to another court. The rules of recusal, I think, similarly, are very strict, and there are very limited reasons why a judge would recuse themselves, and it's unethical for a judge not to recuse themselves in a situation where they legally have to. But it's also unethical for a judge to recuse themselves where they're not legally required to do that. And so it's something that we take very seriously. The subject matter alone, it would never be the basis of a recusal unless it impacted family or some financial interest. Federal court, of course, is different. And we saw this with the issue with marriage equality, where one of the parties wanted to disqualify the bench officer because of bench officer's sexual orientation. And that was ruled to be an invalid basis for recusal in the federal system.
Other questions? Oh, this is going to be one of those audiences where everybody is quiet, and then just when the time runs out, all the hands go up. Right here, please.
I'm John Walbridge. I'm a professor of Islamic Studies at Indiana University. Leaving aside the rather silly things about Sharia law, what impact does being a Muslim have on your being a judge? I mean, Islam is a religion that places great importance on law and great importance on justice. How does it play in your experience?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's when you're raised as a Muslim, you almost don't even identify the values that you hold as being, well, these are the Muslim values that you hold, because they're just the values that you were taught. And it's part of what attracted me to a career in public service, and I think what made me a good prosecutor, because of the idea of justice and equality in particular under the law, that all people, regardless of their station in life, where they come from, should be seen the same and should be seen equally. And I consider that to be a very strong Muslim value. And in many ways it helps you be a better judge, because you want to treat every case and each litigant exactly the same and try to remove identity from any of the decisions that you're making. That's the biggest challenge, and in many ways the most important thing that a judge can do in their courtroom. And similarly, the concept of mercy. Mercy is very important in Islam. And it's a constant balance between justice for victims and mercy on the perpetrators of crime. And that's not to say I always get it right because I'm Muslim, but I feel like I have that internal dialogue, and I give weight to all of those competing values, in part because of the values that I grew up with.
One of the primary themes in Islam are the themes of compassion and mercy. And one aspect that I love about being a judge is the opportunity to demonstrate that, as I understand it, from the best sources of Islam. And so it's an opportunity for me to, in a very public way, because that's my job, whenever I get on the bench, there's a record of everything that I say. And so if there's ever a question that I've mistreated somebody or said something that was inconsiderate, they can bring that issue to judicial qualifications and just state the date and time that they were in my court, and somebody can listen to what I said and how I behaved to see whether or not what they say is true. So for me, it's a wonderful opportunity to demonstrate that even though I am a Muslim, the values in terms of what Islam gives to me is demonstrated in how I treat the people that are in front of me on a daily basis.
Thank you. This gentleman in the front, and then we'll go over to this side.
My name is Murad from Zakat Foundation of America, Chicago-based charity organization. We help one of the people who you evict, the eviction, those kind of things. But besides that, I would like to thanks first to having a Muslim professionals in a high level, and in the Muslim community needs a lot of role models. And if you go to the masjids and mosques and all those places, if we have your kind of people more in the masjids or the mosques, and then there's gonna be a lot of youth that who will be look like that, try to be like you. And I was wondering, do you do anything more? You know, I see you're trying your best, looks like, but what are the tangible things that you do to be more visible in the, especially youth environment, which is needed a lot?
Well, like I indicated before, I don't turn down any invitation. So I've given a talk at the Islamic Center of the San Gabriel Valley in California, as well as the Islamic Center of Irvine, which is close to that to my house. And I've been invited to speak at an Islamic Center in Lomita, California, precisely for this reason. It's kind of embarrassing, I have to say, because I gave this talk on a Friday night, and then afterwards I had all of these kids come up and want to take their picture with me, and I thought, this is I was honored, but I thought, this is ridiculous. These people don't realize how unimportant I feel like I am. But that's why I do that. I'm on the board of a youth organization called the Muslim Jewish High School Students Association, which does community service in Los Angeles. So I think it's important to expose myself to young people as a role model, but then also to help engage in any interfaith organizations where young people are involved, because that's when opinions start to get formed and start to get shaped. And I want to support organizations that puts young people together from different backgrounds so they can see that there doesn't need to be any of the tension perhaps that their parents have had. I'm speaking at the commencement ceremonies in the Claremont colleges in a few weeks to an interfaith group. For that reason also, I think I'll be the first Muslim speaker that they've ever had there, because I think it is so important for young people to have role models and to see that they can get along with each other, even if they're not all from the same background.
Fortunately, I've had the opportunity to be involved in interfaith for a number of years, even before I got on the bench, and have always seen that as part of my obligation as a Muslim in America, because especially with a position as a judge, I have more opportunities to speak than the average person, because judges are held in high esteem in this country. So likewise, I never pass up an opportunity to speak to a group of youth. I've spoken to third and fourth graders in school, spoken to interfaith groups. And there's a expo in Chicago that I'm going to be on a program for in the end of April. But in particular, with respect to youth, I have allowed interns from one of the charter schools in the Indianapolis area to have interns, high school interns, spend a semester in my court. And with that, they're in the court a couple of days a week. We interact. They have a specific project, typically, that they work on with my supervision and the supervision of a faculty at their charter school. And then also, in my movement around the community, I've always had kind of an open door policy with respect to young people. And so for parents who want to send their child to kind of shadow me for a morning, normally that's enough for their attention span. Is a morning with the judge. And so they spend a morning with me, kind of watching what I do, see what goes on in court, and then we go to lunch to kind of talk about what they have seen and observed. Because again, I feel that that's the best way for them to understand that if I can do the job, they can do it. And I know how powerful that interaction is for young people to be able to kind of sit in the same seat that I sit in on a daily basis and say, well, if he can do it, I can probably do it. So again, I consider that to be part of the job description, even though It's not part of the oath that you take, but I see it as clearly a real opportunity to let the next generation know that what is available in terms of career options.
Thank you. All right. The gentleman up in front here, and then we'll go to the gentleman back there.
Thank you. My name is Fazli Siddiq, and I'm a professor at Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is in Canada, for those that might not be entirely familiar. I also am a fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School, but this year I am the Fulbright Visiting Research Chair in Canada-US Relations. Just wanted to thank both of you for your eloquent discussion of some of the topics that I think should be discussed more frequently. My question is there a contradiction between your values as a Muslim and the state laws and the US Constitution that you are required to uphold as a judge? And a follow-up to that, do you leave your religion at the door when you take your seat as a judge? And do you believe that all judges, irrespective of their religious faith or the absence of religious faith in their own lives, Jews and Christians and other denominations alike, would society be best served if we kept our personal values of religion, our personal preferences about lifestyle and so forth, completely behind us, especially for judges and other elected officials when they take their seat at the court or in an assembly, or for that matter in the House or the Senate?
I could start an answer this way. First and foremost, I don't see a conflict between Islam and the values in Islam and democracy. I know that that's a major topic, not only in the Western Hemisphere, but also in the Middle East and other countries. I don't see that, and then I don't leave my Islam behind. But one of the things I feel that makes me so very fortunate to be able to have had the opportunity to serve in this capacity is that Islam influences what I do on the bench. But also, I can't separate the rest of my experience as an American. Because when I think about what influences my work as a judge, I think of the first person who encouraged me to even pursue a legal career, and he was a Jewish lawyer, Charles Feibelman. I think of Julia Carson, who gave me, and she was in the U.S. Congress. She was also in a number of positions in state government in Indiana. But I had the opportunity to learn from her, and we considered ourselves friends. So she influences much of how I see my work as a public and elected official. I also feel very much influenced by the work of W. Dean Muhammad, who helped me appreciate how Islam should be lived in modern society in America. So all of that influences how I do my job. And I think that's the unique opportunity that we have as Americans, because there aren't many places where you can be influenced by a Jew, a Christian, and a Muslim, and have that influence the work that you do as a professional, every day of your life.
Yeah, I'm going to join in those comments. But I would also add that I think being a Muslim helps me to do my job in one other respect that I hadn't thought of earlier. On one hand, you have these values of equality and fairness that you want to uphold that I think people of most, if not all, religious faiths that I'm aware of would also hold. But also, I know what it's like to belong to a group that is not a politically popular group, or a group that is discriminated against, or I know what it's like to have a name that's different from a lot of other people, or to have parents who are from another country. And when I have parties who are in front of me, I'm sensitive to that, and I do have a lot of parties in front of me in Los Angeles that meet those criteria. And I think it's easier for me to be sympathetic and empathetic with those individuals, because that was me. And I don't look at people who are different from me and see that barrier of difference, because I know what it's like to be different. And it helps me apply the law, I think, equally and fairly to everyone, regardless of their background. And that's because of growing up as a Muslim in the United States.
Oh, the gentleman over here, please, microphone.
Thank you. My name is Khizer Hussein. I'm with American Muslim Health Professionals. I spend a lot of time thinking about professional development, and we've talked a lot about mentoring and role modeling. But I wanted to know, for you, as you seek to improve your craft, what things are you thinking about to improve, or are there role models for you that you seek out locally or nationally?
Well, I've just met Judge Shahid, so he's a role model of mine now.
I was going to say the same about you.
It's interesting because when I was at a reception of Muslim professionals and talking a little bit about my experience becoming a judge, and sort of the precarious position you may find yourself in as a Muslim who is up for an election. And this one individual came up to me afterwards and he said, you don't need to worry about getting reelected. The only thing you have to do is make sure that you're perfect. And I thought, that's no pressure. But I understood what he was saying. He basically was saying, just focus on being the best at this job that you can be. And don't give anyone an excuse to come after you because you're not doing something correctly. And it's an experience I think a lot of us have shared growing up in this country, that our parents have shared with us. Just be the best at it. Try to control those things that you can control. And that may be a challenge in this profession, because there aren't a lot of Muslim judges around. There just really aren't. So I do look to other judges that I respect, that I've been in front of, and in order to get better, because I think once you get to the point where you feel like you cannot improve what you do, then you can only get worse. So I try to work on that at a regular basis. And then I try to provide that for other people too. There was one individual, a young Muslim young man, who called me up out of the blue one afternoon, and he had just passed the bar. And I guess he found out about me on the internet or something, and he called me up and he said, would it be all right with you if I brought my family down to your chambers if you could swear me in? Because he wanted to be sworn in by the first Muslim judge in California. And I thought, I guess it's kind of odd because I don't know this person, but sure, come on down. And I had the whole family come down into my chambers, and I swore him in, and try to provide some amount of mentoring for him and other young lawyers coming through. But Muslim and non-Muslim alike, that's something that I try to provide for people who want to be where I am, and it's something that I look for in people who are where I want to be.
I really get inspired by the people that I come in contact with in the courts, and also associated with the process of running for office and so forth. And then the opportunity to help people. Occasionally, as judges, we get letters from people that were in court, and depending on the outcome, sometimes the outcome is good. Someone who successfully finishes drug treatment court. I've gotten some letters like that. I got a very long, almost a short book, from a lady who had been unfortunate with respect to drug treatment court, and I had to send her to prison. But she commented that was the best thing that happened to her, and talked about all the good things that happened after she thought about some of the things that were said to her. So I think as long as we have an open heart to just the average person, because I've run into people in Walmart that where they say, "Are you Judge Shaheed?" And then I say, "Yeah," and they say, "Come here. Here's the judge that was my judge." So that tells me that in my interaction with them, they understood that I was doing my job, but I did care about them as a person. So the feedback that I get from people inspires me to seek the excellence that is available to all of us in the work that we do.
Any other questions? We've got somebody all the way in the back of the room, and then Don will give you, or I think we did. Oh, no, maybe it was just your hand going. Okay, Don will give you the last question.
I'll be a repeat offender here. Not on the topic of religion so much, but the advantages and disadvantages of being an elected judge. Some people think that puts too much popular pressure on judges in order to get reelected. A related thing is the recall, which I guess California has. I don't know about other states. I recall our namesake Woodrow Wilson, when he was campaigning for the presidency, went around. He was for the initiative and referendum at the state level for recalling local state officials, but not judges. Teddy Roosevelt went in one step further. He thought judges should be recalled too. I'd just like to get your views on the election of judges and also the recall issue.
Well, not having gone through an election, what I would say is this. It is important for judges, I think, to have some degree of accountability to the public that they serve. Now, what's the best way to achieve that? In California, we have trial court judges elected, and if someone challenges them at the end of their term, they have to fight for re-election. And the primary problem with that structure is that you walk into the ballot box and you don't know who the people are. There hasn't been a real campaign that anyone would pay any attention to. And the average citizen doesn't know, is this judge doing a good job? Are they not doing a good job in 99.9% of the cases? So really, they're basing their decision on the name and the ballot designation, and that's it. And in our state, we don't even have political parties. These are non-political positions. So it's really name and what you do for a living, which gives some people an advantage and some people a disadvantage. And the unfortunate thing is you probably have judges who are getting challenged for the wrong reasons, perhaps. One other way that could be handled is at the appellate level, judges have an up or down ballot. So no one runs against an appellate justice, but the public has an opportunity at the end of a term to say this judge is doing a good job or they're not doing a good job, thumbs up or thumbs down, which kind of removes a little bit of that, the putting two names next to each other on a ballot. But I will say, we've taken oath to not allow public pressure, public sentiment to play a role in our decisions. But that's easier said than done. When you have a case where if the wrong thing happens, you're going to be all over the newspaper or whatever, and it's going to be your name that's on it, and we've seen that happen. It's hard not to consider how this is going to play out, and it makes it a little bit more difficult, I think, for a judge to truly be completely divorced of public reaction or public sentiment. I don't know, Judge Shaheed, if that's your experience.
Well, I've been appointed and I've run for election 3 times, and there have been some discussions about changing the system, where I live. I guess it's either the politics of the many or the politics of the few. When you stand for election, everybody gets to have some say as to whether they think you're appropriate for the job. It's up to the electeds, the populace, to inform themselves. And we all know that a lot of times that doesn't happen. The other side of it is, the politics of the few, because you have these judicial nominating commissions, who appoints them. But what I say to young people, and young lawyers who want to, who aspire to be judicial officers, is there's no way to get there without politics, And when you look at the process, the number of judicial appointments that are still open in this administration, is politics at play? You can be the judge of that. But there's no way that I'm aware of in the history of our nation that politics doesn't have some role to play in who's on the bench as a judge. So it's just a question of how open that process should be to the general public.
Well, I have to thank you both. I mean, this has been really illuminating and fascinating, and I can't tell you how grateful the Wilson Center is to both of you for having traveled all this way and giving us the benefit of your thinking and your experience, and we're going to look forward to following your careers and see what happens next. We'll definitely be following your reelection campaigns, that's for sure. Before I ask you to join me in thanking the judges, I will tell you that we're going to take a 15-minute break, and there will be coffee and such outside, and then we'll come back for a panel of 3 mayors and 1 councilman, which I think should be extremely illuminating as well. So will you join me in thanking our panelists?